What time is it, you ask? Well, of course, it's business crime. That's right, it's me, Mike the Mapmaker, and today I'm making a map of a blacksmith's shop. Because when putting together a starting town for a fantasy adventure, I think a blacksmith is an absolute must. It's a great place for your players to gear up before a quest, and a great place for them to dump their hard-earned cash once they are back. And of course, in this series, it's a great place for our players to rob if they want to get the best armor and weapons in town. So, as always, I start with the layouts. This time I don't have a little doodle map like we did with the bank map. I'm actually just flying on instinct. I'm letting my ideas and intuition guide me. Like with our first map, I'm imagining the blacksmith lives here on site, working the forge in the daytime and then retreating to the back of the house in the night. And a big difference between this and the first shop that I made is that the blacksmith has a bigger family, so we're going to add a few additional rooms to the back end as well. Even so, this blacksmith probably isn't super rich. I imagine a blacksmith makes more than the general store owner, but has much higher expenses, so it kind of evens out. One thing though, when starting this map off, is I wanted to work around the focal point of the subject, which of course for a blacksmith is the forge. I threw in a great big bloody forge there, and I added a massive set of bellows, and I'm now kind of going around that idea. So we have the forge at the back, quite a large room, and then the front of house, well, I made that even larger, and I'm just trying to figure out at this point how to divide it up exactly. So there's a lot of back and forth as I adjust the walls and start to figure out the textures and things. And of course, you know me, I love my colour schemes on my maps, if you've been following along so far. And for this one, well, the forge and the bellows, well, they actually kind of encouraged me to go for yellow and red. So I'm adding lots of little yellow bits and bobs to the map, and then kind of accenting it with a few dashes of red here and there. I even go for the red tiles in the kitchen, but I think that's a bit too much. And one thing I quite like is with the blacksmith, well, they obviously work with metal, so on this map I'm going to try and bring that in more with some of the props I throw down. So for example, I'm really happy with the kitchen. We have a metal dining table and seats, probably more your garden chair, what you expect outside, but I think that's kind of cute, the idea the blacksmith made a lot of metal stuff that they use in their own house as well. When making maps like this, I like to give myself time limits. I mean, with the bank map I just did, I went well over what I was intending. I was originally going to do hopefully like 2 hours for that, ended up taking the better part of 10. So for this one, I was a bit more stringent with my time, and I actually tried to make the map a little bit smaller, so it wouldn't take as long. I mean, it still took me about 6 hours, which is progress. I mean, we're moving in the right direction, but yeah, I want to be able to crank these out faster or maintaining that quality. So that's kind of a challenge I think I'm going to be focusing on in the future with future videos, is trying to get all these details, but you know, not take all day to do it. I think that's a part of being a creative person making something, is that balance, and you learn and you get better. And I think within this series alone, I mean, I'm feeling already way better about my maps than I did in episode 1, and we're only on episode 8. So imagine where we'll be in episode 108. We'll just keep on cracking at it and see what sort of maps we can create. And I think one thing I was really happy with going throughout this entire map is the detailing. I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3. I'm trying to finish it. Very fun game, but the first time I tried, I put in 30 hours and beat Act 1, and then I was like, that's enough, you know, that was grand. So I'm trying again, and one thing as I'm going and playing the game is I'm really appreciating the level of detail in the environments, in terms of all the little doodads you can mess with, all the bookshelves and the crates and the sacks and the pots and vases and all that sort of stuff. So that's helping inspire me with my maps, thinking of like, okay, my players are here, what could they possibly interact with, and what sort of stuff can we put in to make this space feel lived and have a lot of detail? Because I think sometimes if you try to make it a bit minimalist, it just looks a bit drab and doesn't look like a real space that someone's occupying. Talking about spaces, I've now kind of figured out kind of how I want to arrange the front of house. We've got this big square area where we're placing all of the items that you can purchase. And at first, I put all the weapons out here. But then I started thinking from the idea of a blacksmith and what your players might do if they try to rob them. I figured, would you really have all the weapons out in front of you for someone to come in and grab and then just straight up try and attack you and rob you with your own weapons? That doesn't sound very logical to me. So I flipped the script. What we've got now is a bunch of tools out front, and these are the sort of things I can imagine your average town folk might come in to the blacksmith to buy, and then we're putting the weapons and some of the specialist pieces behind the counter, so it's not nearly as easy just to grab and start threatening people. In the bottom left corner of the front, we have our little storeroom that kind of doubles as an office. So again, if we're thinking about where your players might go in the map, if they're going on a criminal route, well, this is where the important documentation is. And I think the big chest there is where all the cash is kept. Once again, though, you got to think about how it's locked up. And I think a blacksmith's best way of defending all of this valuable stuff is with their technical skill. I think this is a map you can definitely deploy an elaborate alarm system, maybe even a booby trap on the treasure chest in the office. So you lockpick into the chest, and that's surprisingly easy, but that's only because you did it wrong, and now the whole chest explodes in your face. A classic blacksmith prank if there ever was one. Now, I was actually struggling with the forge room of what to put in there, because I used so many props in the front of house, I wanted it to be quite different. So, one thing that I came up with, I was really happy with, is the coal. Of course, a big forge is going to need a way to be fueled, and if you go into Inkarnate, even with the pro account, they actually don't have any coal doodads or anything like that. So what I've simply done is taken some stone, some pebbles, and made them really dark and boosted the contrast, and I think it looks absolutely the business. So that becomes a really nice little part of the map, and I think it adds a lot of realism to it. And of course, I'm throwing in some wood as well to get it started, and some, what is that, tinder, some scraps of twigs to get it going. Of course, when the forge is going, it's going to be incredibly hot in there, so that's an easy thing to describe if your players go into the back rooms as the sweltering heat. And now I'm feeling pretty good about the inside. It's of course time to start on the outside as well. Now, with the maps we've made so far, the outside, I think, is one where I've actually improved my skills quite a bit, and my first map, looking at it at the general store, looks a bit basic compared to the last map, the bank. So what I've done for this is I've had those two previous maps open, and I've tried to incorporate elements from both of them in terms of how I drop down the trees and the bushes and the textures and all the colors and things. And I've tried to do a hybrid of those two styles to give this series of maps a bit of cohesion, as if it is all in one place. I also added a little thing out there I quite like, is the washing line, and I'm trying to texture the paths to be a bit more dynamic. I think if you only use a couple of textures, it can look a little bit flat. Now, of course, you want to always try to get the colors to match. That way it does look very nice and even. Otherwise, it can look all over the shop and be just horrible on the eyes. A sensory nightmare if every single tree and bush is a different color. Oh man, it makes me want to be sick. But here we go, we're adding all sorts of details, and I like the idea that out back we have a scrap area, a little junkyard that's hidden from sight behind a few bushes and a little path there. And that path, I imagine, is where the blacksmith gets the deliveries they need. I think the blacksmith will get loads of deliveries. Hell, that might be a way that your players can actually maybe sneak on in with a fake delivery, and they actually get inside once they get them to sign for it. I don't know. Of course, with the forge roaring, we need a bit of smoke on top, and now we're adding those little details that really just supercharge our maps. We're talking lighting and shade and all sorts of fun little effects as well. One thing I've just noticed as well, it seems like the blacksmith has received a delivery, and oh my goodness, it looks like one of the townsfolk, well, they love and respect the blacksmith, and so they brought them a like and subscribe. What a lovely thing to do. Maybe you should consider it as well. Anyway, back to the map, and of course, I am adding in a lot of motion lines. I think it's really good to show where people have been walking around and moving, and with the path to the right, I'm doing a lot of straight lines, because I imagine a lot of these deliveries, they're coming in on things like wheelbarrows and everything. One thing I've just realised, I can't believe it, I didn't actually add a place for the horses to actually hitch up. Oh, don't worry, I've just remembered I made those fences outside. We'll say that's where the horses can go. So we're done with the daytime, and now we are just adjusting it, changing it up to be the nighttime. The big one for this, of course, the difference between the day and the night, is the forge. The forge does not run at nighttime, so we added a lovely big smoke effect above the forge. That it's the bee's knees. It's really nice to look at, and of course at night we get rid of that. So the maps look different from each other, and I quite like that when you have quite a staggering difference between the day and night. I think in the future we might do a tavern map, and that's something I'll have to focus on, is how does the tavern look in the day versus how it looks in the night. That's a thought for another day though, because it looks like we finished up with another set of maps. Check it out. Maybe this is a bit egotistical for me to say, but Mike the Mapmaker, you've done it again. I'm quite happy how this turned out. I think some of the detailing looked pretty good. Let me show you some highlights, or mic lights. Okay, alright, to start us off, we have the kids' bedroom. Quite happy with this one. I think it came out well. I used a lot of the little doodads that are included in Inkarnate. The ones I don't tend to use. I got a bunch of little toys in there. It's very cute. And of course, this kid's a bit messy. We've got lots of laundry all over the shop. Speaking of shop, in the back rooms, well, I placed these ingots here. Now, it was a bit of a problem. Inkarnate by default does not include any ingots. So I had to get creative. I took some pipe and I changed the color to give us like a bit of iron, silver, I don't know, maybe copper. And finally, we go to the back office. One of the things I quite like to do in spaces that aren't being used is throw in a few cobwebs. The cobwebs aren't just for dungeons, you know. They're everywhere in those hard-to-clean places. And this is a spot I think would be really great to hide a bizarre, random, magical item. Something that maybe even the blacksmith doesn't realize is magical and has just maybe found or been given and just shoved it in the back somewhere, and your players can maybe find that with a good investigation check. And there you have it. That is our map of the blacksmiths. We've got the day and the night. And of course, you can download it absolutely for free with the link below. And what do we have in store for our next episode? Well, when I get that feeling, it's like medieval healing. We are going to an apothecary. That's right. Medical kind of potion maker type of person. I don't know what's going to be included. That's how off the cuff this is all going to be. So if that sounds good, well, I want you to keep on trucking. I'm Mike the Mapmaker, and I'll see you in episode 9. Bye.